All right. Good morning, Judith.
Morning, Sonya.
Welcome to the Coaches Cup. I'm Sonya Green from SonyaGreenCoaching.com.
And I am Judith Fender. I am a weight loss coach with the No BS weight loss system program.
And we're back this week. Last week, we started talking about The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'm holding the book up right now so you can see it. But it's a short book. It's about 200 pages. I think, Judith, you said it's about a 4-hour listen if you listen to your books on Audible. And I do listen to a lot of books on Audible, but I'll tell you, this one I have written in so much that I wanted to have I just anticipated that it might be that kind of book from what I'd heard from other people. So I bought a copy and I've made so many notes in it. So last week we talked about getting in your own way. And if you haven't listened to that, then definitely go back and listen to that. But this week we're talking about being in integrity with yourself and how not being in integrity with yourself is what causes many of the upper limit problems. And his main premise with the book, if I can shorten it down to like a 30-second explanation, is that many of us never make the big leap because we want to stay in our comfort zones.
Right.
We want to stay in this box somewhere between feeling negative feelings and feeling more positive feelings than we think we have a right to. Is that a okay summary?
I think that's spot on. Yeah. So it's not willing to feel the discomfort of stepping outside the box. Yep.
Yep. So, being in integrity with yourself, I like the way Hendricks looks at this because he says that for many people, thinking about being in integrity with yourself is a moral issue. And he says, let's take it out of the realm of morality. It's really a physics issue. And I like that because, he says if it's a moral issue, we can argue about it. We can argue about what it takes to be in integrity with yourself. If it's a physics issue, it's much more factual, what you do and don't do. And, so many times we use those moral issues as a way to avoid movement. We can sit and argue with ourselves about this and never make any forward progress. So I really like looking at this from the standpoint of it's a physics issue rather than is it a moral issue. And what I mean by a physics issue is he said that many times being in integrity with yourself is that flow of energy. He says it's like there's a pebble in the water hose and it's keeping the water from flowing. So you are, and I know I'm holding you back, so hang on, I'm going to throw it to you in just a second. But it's like you are trying to move out of your box. You're trying to get out of your upper limit problem, but you've got a pebble keeping you right here. And if you can just get that pebble out of the way, then the water is free and you are free to move upward. So go.
Well, this is the part where there are many times in this book where I feel like I don't even know the definition of the word woo, but when we talk about in coaching, sometimes like things sound a little woo. This for me, what I hear is when he talks about energy, because right, our thinking is energy. We are energy beings, and if we are out of integrity with ourselves, if our structure isn't allowed to flow the energy, if we have blockages, if we're holding back, if we're resisting, if we're avoiding, in this context of integrity and with our thoughts, that this to me just felt like exactly how he explained it, just an energy, minding your energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's we have the ability to feel a wholeness and completeness. And I think this is a little woo because it's difficult to explain. You know, I know when I am being honest with myself. I know when I'm trying to maybe not lie to myself, but I'm trying to trick myself into believing something.
Mhm.
And there's not this integrity. There's not this completeness that I'm feeling versus when I'm being honest, when
Well,
I'm,
well, and
yeah,
what I'm thinking, even as you're saying that, is like, that feeling when you do something and you're open and honest and it feels good. And the feeling when you show up and you're carrying
yes,
some resentment, you're carrying some icky feeling. And that's because you've got an energy blockage, because you're not in integrity with yourself.
yeah.
From that, it just feels yucky.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's bring this down to even this podcast. There are times
Yeah.
when there has been a noticeable energy difference in or at least it's
Mhm.
noticeable to me
Mhm.
in some episodes, and that's always because there's something going on in my brain, maybe some conflict that I'm dealing with, very possibly unrelated to the podcast, most likely unrelated to the podcast. Maybe it's that I didn't have as much time as I thought I should to prep, but more likely there's something else, from outside going on trying to take up my time and it's sucking that energy.
Yeah, like a hole in your integrity and it's just leaking out.
Yeah.
Your hose, your water hose has a hole in it instead of a pebble.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So if we can get into integrity with ourselves, then we can all those barriers that we talked about last week are like those pebbles, keeping your water hose from flowing.
Mhm.
And so, if we can remove those barriers and get into integrity with ourselves, then we are free to grow and move past our upper limits
Mm.
into our zone of genius.
Right, right. And because what is in our way are our upper limit problems of this
Yeah.
flow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, can you think of specific examples of people that you've worked with who have this integrity problem?
Oh gosh, Sonia. Right off the bat, I can't think of, well, I did have one client I remember doing specifically, um, that she wasn't following her 24-hour plan
Yeah.
and or in her day. And I was like, why is this a problem? And then and she's, because I'm out of integrity with myself. And what do you do when you're out of integrity with yourself? Well, in her action line and her do line was, she beats herself up and
Mhm.
she makes a meal,
Absolutely.
which actually just creates being more out of integrity with herself, like just tearing it
Yes.
down. And so that was just really eye opening for both me as a coach and her to see, like, oh, so in essence, when you think you're out of when you're not following your plan and you think you're out of integrity with yourself, then you create being out of integrity with yourself.
Exactly. And this is that's why I asked you because that's what I think about um whether your plan is for weight loss or it's a plan, to keep up with for things you have to do this week. We our brains, we know what we have to do and we know when we're following that schedule or that plan.
Yep.
Um, and how many times do we argue for our pain? How many times have you seen people say, but I'm on plan. I'm exercising. I'm doing all the things and I can't lose weight. Or, I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to do, but I'm not getting my work done. And then you start questioning them and they're not. They're not
Mhm.
really. I did get in a fight with my husband, and so I ate a bag of chips. Those weren't on my plan. I did do that. And well, Thursday it was really cold outside, so I didn't exercise. And so they're not in integrity. They didn't do all the things that they said. Their brain knows this.
Mhm. This is so I don't mean to I'm flipping through the pages and I'm reminded of where he talks about, and I don't know, I was probably how old when Bill Clinton was in office and his scandal, and he talks
Yeah.
about the telltale sign
Yes.
you're not in integrity with yourself.
Yes.
For him, it was that moment where he says,
I did
um,
not have sexual relations
like,
with that woman.
yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
and
I
I knew I was
remember that
young,
day.
and I remember it too. And I'm
Yeah.
like, just to have this story to bring to about being in integrity with yourself, I thought was just super powerful. Probably for for our generation, recognizing that story and what his problem, his upper limit was. What does he say about because the economy was good, all the things were good,
Mhm.
won a second term, and that he just possibly there was a tiny voice in his head that just said things can't really be this good.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm,
And I mean, this is self-sabotage.
mhm, mhm,
Not being in integrity with yourself is that moment of self-sabotage. And whether it's, most of us don't sabotage it quite as dramatically or as, it's not broadcast on national television, thank goodness. But whether it is or it's not, our brains know when we're lying to ourselves and when we're lying to other people. So maybe it's having an affair and ruining your marriage. Maybe it's eating a bag of chips or, a handful of chocolate or whatever your poison is because you've had a bad day.
mhm, mhm.
Either way, you are not in integrity. You're not being true to yourself. You are creating a barrier to your ultimate happiness.
Hmm. I'm thinking about that, and I just read where he said to note to future presidents who are tempted to tell whopper lies. The flow always wins. For irrefutable evidence, have a look at the Grand Canyon.
I love that. I do remember that. I didn't remember it till you said that, but yeah.
Hmm.
And we have one life. You and I are, I, we like to think of ourselves as middle aged, but in truth, we're on our last half, you
Yeah.
know, unless we live to be more than 100, we are somewhere in the last half. And, you know, think about the Grand Canyon. That took years. A little bit of water trickling through. It took years to form that. I I don't want to stop what I could be. I don't want to clog that hose by arguing with myself about so many little things. You know, I don't want to not feel my feelings. That's a big one that I've worked on this year is understanding that I have feelings like normal human beings.
Yeah. As you're saying that, I'm thinking about, going with the flow, and what is one of my obstacles is fighting the flow, right? Going against
Yeah.
it, arguing, um and it just feels well, I'm going with woo, that just tapping into that feeling, and what would it feel like to not fight myself? What would it feel like to just let go and go with the flow and trust myself and show up
Yeah.
and
Because
just
the flow is trying to create something beautiful.
yeah, doing yeah.
I mean, it's not. It is not for the faint of heart. You know, it's a whole lot easier to just give in to your habit brain and do the things you've always done. But no, I always say that. I always say it's easier. And then you correct me and say, no, it's more familiar. And that's the truth.
It is.
That really is, because it is not easy to clog that flow. You cannot be in integrity with yourself if, and I've gotten all confused now.
Yeah, I'm hanging with you.
But you cannot be in integrity with yourself and be arguing
Right.
with yourself about what you need to do. You know,
Yeah.
we have this inner voice, this prefrontal cortex that knows the way out of the box. But we're just afraid that saber-toothed tiger is going to jump out and get us if we stick our head out a little bit.
Right.
That's the familiar thing, is to stay in the box.
Sure is. It sure is. And I'm thinking about his analogy of using being the spring, the coil, the spiral.
Yes.
And I think about Tigger, you're right, from Winnie the Pooh,
Uh-huh.
Tigger's tail, and all that energy that Tigger had in that tail, and how resilient he was. And, I want to be like Tigger.
Yeah.
I want to be in integrity with myself and always managing my energy with the ups and downs, and not thinking of myself in a box,
Mhm.
but managing my life like Tigger. I hope that makes sense. That's what I thought of.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does, and that gets back, I think, to the age thing that I was trying to talk about earlier. I don't think I did a very good job of that, but you know, we have so little time to create in our lives, and you don't want to stop it up and waste even a minute of it. All that energy is there. All of that is waiting to create something.
Mhm.
That's who we are. I mean, we are beings who are on this planet to create. We create different things, but we all are creative beings. And so, don't stop up your energy flow.
Mhm.
Don't. It's easy to be Eeyore.
I was
E
going to say that. Don't be Eeyore.
Yeah, it's easy though. That's what is comfortable. That is what is familiar. Um, Eeyore stays, in his tent. He walks in there and just stands in his tent and waits for it to fall on him, basically.
Mhm.
That's easy. Tigger's out there bouncing around,
Going for it. Yeah. Living his
Yeah,
best life.
getting stuck in trees and getting a great view way up there.
I have not seen an episode of Winnie the Pooh in years. I need
I haven't either. This is all going on memory. But, I remember him getting stuck up in a tree and looking at everything. Eeyore never gets that view.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. Yeah.
So, anyway, okay. So, what are some of the things that keep us out of integrity with ourselves? You want to talk about the big W?
Oh, oh my gosh. There is not one listener who will not recognize this. And somewhere I'm looking for that nice list he had.
It's on 111.
Yeah, but somewhere back in 68, I think it is, that he talks about worry.
Yes.
And I really appreciated what he had to tell us. Pardon me while I look down. It's actually on page 64 where he starts
Okay.
talking about worry, the typical ways that we upper limit ourselves. And so the thing about worry that, like, we learn through coaching, is that it just pretends it's one of those emotions that we call it an
Hmm.
indulgent emotion, goes with confusion. It's
Yeah.
actually, it's worry is an action. I'm correcting myself.
Okay.
Worry is an action, but because it just pretends to be necessary, it just creates, it's just constant going.
Hmm.
So anyway, where am I going with this? Sonya, you may have to pull me off on this one here. um,
Well, it keeps us, I mean, because it pretends to be necessary, we never move past it. We catastrophize, we spend our energy.
yes. Well, he's talking about there's two kinds of worry. Like there's worry that's reality based, like where you leave the house and you think, did I leave the kettle on the stove? Like
Yeah.
there's that worry. And then there is the pointless worry that we all go through where just a conscious stream of negativity where we're worrying about BS things that don't serve us.
Yeah. So I used to catastrophize. In fact, it's something that I still occasionally I catch myself and I stop it immediately. But in my mind, I wanted to be prepared for the worst case scenario in every situation. And so I would play it out in my head. It sounds ridiculous to say
No,
that
no,
now.
no.
It's
Same.
common.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's very common. We believe we don't believe, but in our minds we justify it by saying, "Oh, well, if I think about this and plan for it ahead of time, then then I'll be somehow prepared when it happens."
Right, right.
It's a
And
lie.
it feels you and I talked about this, like it feels helpful. Like
Yes.
if I know how all the bad things that could happen, then when
Yes.
I come in, I'll know how to handle it. It's
Yes.
comforting on some level. It's that ritual. It's that the habit of the ritual, or that's what
Yeah.
it's just like it was like a pacifier for
Yeah.
me. I'm much better at it than I was.
Mhm.
Um, but I do like here also on 71 where he has like how I love this. He even says, I notice myself worrying about something, how he has this process.
Yes.
And, I let go of worrying thoughts, shifting my focus away from them. I wonder what positive new things is trying to come into being.
Yeah.
And then,
Yes, that's a point that I loved. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
no,
cut
no,
you off
no,
there,
go, go, go.
but um he says that we look at those moments as triggers.
Mhm,
What is it that's trying to happen here?
mhm,
Because many times we worry because something unfamiliar, uncomfortable, but good is trying to happen, and
mhm,
we're worrying to put it back down at the level we're comfortable with.
mhm.
So I love that. I love that concept of I will stop myself when I'm worrying, but the new thought is not, move away from the worry. It's, ooh, what's that good
Tell me.
thing
Yeah.
that's trying to come out?
Mhm. I like that too. And he says that he usually gets a body feeling, not a thought or idea of where that new positive thing is trying to come through. He opens his focus to feel his body, and that it is a deep feeling. He lets himself feel it deeply for as long as he possibly can. And later, he often gets an idea of the positive thing that was trying to come in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
It doesn't happen in that same moment
Mhm.
most often.
Mhm.
And that's the thing too. We aren't patient people generally, but this takes some time, and it takes being willing to feel your feelings, which is the woo part you keep referencing.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, but listen, I folks, if this all sounds kooky to you, I am there beside you. I get it. I have never been a person who liked to feel. You can't trust feelings. You can't trust that. You have to trust logic. That's where safety is. That's where you move forward. Yeah, that's really it's not true. That's something that we tell ourselves.
Right. Feelings, even as I think I've said this somewhere before. I remember learning from a counselor years ago, like, oh, feelings are facts. Feelings are facts. But what they really are, they're the signs. You don't necessarily, this is like, hey, let's take a look at this. What is this telling me?
Yes.
But like, so anxiety,
Mhm.
it's a sign. But with anxiety, you let the feeling be there. You don't, just because you have a feeling doesn't mean you let it drive the bus. And
No.
what's the word I'm looking for? Doesn't it's not going to be your decision maker. It's not where you
Right.
make decisions from those feelings, but it's
No, no,
just
no.
yeah.
No, people who talk about, oh, I let my heart lead me. Now, I am not going down that path. Don't hear me when I say the woo. That is not what I am saying. But you cannot resist those feelings, which is what we do. We want to believe that we can control everything, which is why we pre-plan with our little worry game that we play. And you can't control always what you're going to feel, but you can't resist it. You've got to feel it. You've got to be willing to drop into it and feel it, and then move forward with it, like you said, by your side, not making your decisions.
Not making the decisions. If there's anything you take, look, if there's anything you take away about feelings,
Yeah.
especially if it's anxiety, I have so many clients who come to me for that you just feel it, and you trust and learn to trust your conscious brain and trust those decisions, and anxiety just gets to come along for the ride.
Yep. Yeah, it's just there.
Mm.
The other thing that he talks about with in being in integrity with yourself and um, causing a limit to your success is um, the that will sometimes will blame or will criticize,
Ugh.
and I see this a lot. It's much easier to blame somebody else or criticize somebody else. Um, in fact, I go ahead. Were you getting ready to say something?
I was thinking I took it to be self-criticism, because I was like, oh, that's me. I'm very critical of myself.
But sometimes it's critical of others. So I was thinking about, we had talked about there was somebody who had read this book and had a very different viewpoint than we had. Um, and she had commented in a public group about this book that that he seemed to brag a lot, and she couldn't get past his bragging, and there was several other things, criticisms that she had. And I thought, when I read that, I thought, that's her upper limit issue, keeping her from really,
Learning.
yeah, learning from this book.
Mhm.
If you try, well, I mean, you may not even realize you're trying, but you can find criticism, either criticizing yourself or criticizing others, blaming yourself or blaming others. That is super easy to fall into. And guess what? When you're doing that, you are not growing. Let's
Mhm.
talk about a pebble in a water hose, loggerhead.
Yeah.
That's, you mentioned that earlier. Um,
He
and
said
I think,
some, yeah, he used this, told the story about getting to, it sounded like CEOs together, and he called them loggerhead. And, I'm from North Carolina. So I was like, why is he called like turtles? Why is he calling them a loggerhead? So we Googled it, and it's a blockhead. And Sonia and I both were like, imagining swimming with a giant block head, where, in actuality, a loggerhead turtle has a very pointed head for a
uh,
fish swimming. But imagine trying swimming with like a giant rectangle in front of you, and how hard that would be, or a giant
yeah,
square
yeah. What is
versus,
it that you can't put a square peg in a round hole?
yeah, that's it.
What if your garden hose is always round, and you're trying to push water through it and grow and become your own Grand Canyon, and instead you're going through it with the concrete block.
Oh,
That's not going to work. And if you blame and criticize, whether you're blaming and criticizing yourself or somebody else, you're never going to get outside of that box. You're never going to grow and get past your upper limit problem. So you can do it. Plenty of people do it. Oh my goodness. So many people.
and even as we're talking about this, I just feel like I think it's important to note that this goes on every day. That this is
Absolutely.
mind management every single day.
And hear this, dear listeners, it goes on in our brains.
Mhm. Mm.
We have not got this all figured out. We read this stuff, we talk about this stuff, we write about this stuff because we live it every day.
Living it right now.
Yeah, yeah. But the next time you start to say something critical or blaming, what if it's just like worry? What if you stop yourself and say, huh, I wonder what progress I'm impeding here?
Mhm.
Why have I put a concrete block on my head to get through my garden hose?
Yeah, and what am I missing out on by spending all this time on worrying? Because
Yeah,
it's taking me from enjoying something.
yeah. It's like focus.
Mhm,
It removes you from your focus.
mhm.
It
I do have
takes you out of that integrity with yourself.
I have a client that who had lost her weight. Life is good. Got a raise. A husband's the stay-at-home dad because she asked for like this significant raise and got the raise and all the things. And but this need to worry, just not being able to let go of worry. And it was super, super helpful for her to learn that, it's just pretending to be necessary. What are you missing out on? Like she
Yeah,
couldn't believe her life was that good, that she'd lost her weight and then that her husband's raising the kid and that she got the rate. Like, yeah, it was so good.
yeah. And so what we have to practice doing is dropping all of those stories,
Mhm.
dropping the worry, dropping the blame, the criticism, and dropping into that feeling of what it feels like to be in the flow,
Mm.
to be in integrity with yourself. We have to practice feeling good. We have to practice those feelings or allow those feelings. I don't mean practice them, but I guess kind of practice them too, because I've talked before about how I sometimes practice bringing up a negative feeling just to prove to myself that I can do that, that
Mhm.
I have control of it.
Mhm.
And it's the same way, where does joy sit in my body?
Mm. Mhm.
Where does exhilaration, where does creativity sit in my body?
Mm.
What does it feel like to access that?
Mhm.
That's just as necessary as sitting with sadness or frustration or disappointment.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I 100%.
Getting in our woo here.
Yes, we are. I was like, and then you can practice the feeling of anxiety too, folks, just so you know.
Yeah.
When you practice bringing it forward, it's a skill and it shows you that it only gets so big.
Yes.
It's
That
not as
yeah,
scary as you think it is.
and that's the benefit, right? That's the benefit of practicing it, just so you all don't think I'm totally insane for practicing sadness. But that I, number one, have never let myself feel a lot of that. So I do have to practice it because it's not something that I was very um
Right.
I,
Well,
I wasn't in integrity with myself in feeling my feelings.
mhm,
I
mhm,
always blocked that flow. And so yeah, so practicing a negative feeling serves the purpose of letting you know you can keep it from getting too big, too small. It's there. This is where it is. And
and that
I have.
it's control that you can manage it with because you
Yes.
think thoughts that create those feelings, and if you manage your mind, you can manage the feelings.
Yes, absolutely. I want to talk about one more because I see this a lot, and I will tell you this is one that I have worked on over the years. But one of the other actions that keep us out of integrity with ourselves is deflecting.
Oh gosh, this was gold. When I saw this, I was like, word. Yep.
So I think I'm going to generalize here, and I could be wrong, but I think Southerners, especially Southern women, we are taught that you don't accept a compliment. I mean, you don't own it, whatever it is. You accept it, but you have to be kind of like, so if somebody says, "Oh, you look so pretty today," and you're like, "Oh, well, this is something I bought on sale," or
Minimizing it, diminishing it is,
yes,
yeah. I mean, I recognize that feeling right away. Like, oh, like, don't look at me. Like, oh, it's okay.
yes,
Don't look at me.
yes, yes. I will tell you, my husband, when we started dating about 11 years ago, he would compliment me and I would deflect, not
Mhm.
even realizing that I was doing it. And finally, one day he said, if you keep doing that, I'm going to stop giving you compliments.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh,
Oh.
well, I kind of enjoy them. So I kind of like this. So I need to learn how to accept that. Somebody was thanking me the other day for something that I had done helping them in coaching. And I started deflecting. Well, it's all you. It's all you.
No.
And she was like, well, I get that it's my thought work, but you guided me there. And I was like, oh, yeah, I
Is that
still need some work on that.
like just doing my job, man? Yeah.
But how does deflecting keep us out of integrity with
Oh,
ourselves?
well, it keeps us from experiencing abundance. There's the huge, the mic drop moment. Like, you
Yes.
are missing out on that energy of the flow of allowing good things to come into your life, and experiencing that. I'm going to call it positive energy, the love.
Yes. Yes, I love that. I haven't told you this, but abundance is my word of 2021.
Oh, nice.
That's the word that I'm working on.
Mhm. Beautiful word.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that. Deflecting keeps us from experiencing the abundance
Mhm.
that's there for us.
Mhm.
So obviously, you can see abundance can't happen if you're allowing the upper limit problem,
Right, because you're deflecting the abundant energy from you.
pushing it back down.
Right, and you need, letting it come in, like, you need letting it come in, letting that be present in your body, letting it become a familiar feeling
Yeah.
for you. The more it's not gonna feel familiar in the
Yeah.
beginning, like taking compliments, it feels foreign,
Yeah.
but we are all capable of learning that foreign language
Yeah.
and can become proficient at speaking the language of our feelings. How's
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it feels foreign, to go back to last week because for me, I feel like I have some fundamental flaw where I'm not worthy.
Mm.
And that has been reinforced, I think, with our upbringing and reacting a certain way, not being proud, um, in the arrogance kind of form of that word. But I think that it's easier to believe, well, I'm not that worthy. I'll just push that down.
Yeah, I'm no more special than anybody else.
Yeah.
Not owning your specialness. And
And you
that
know what? You're not any more special than anybody else, but we're all amazingly
unique.
yes.
And and he talks about that in here too. I know what we're getting ready to get long, but he talks about your uniqueness in,
Mhm.
um, I think that's one of his mantras he wants us to say, and about, um, mm, sorry, bunny trail. It's part of being the genius, accepting your geniusness
Yes.
is accepting and owning your uniqueness.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So we had just planned two podcasts on this book. That's not to say that it won't figure into future conversations,
Mhm.
but we hope that in these 2 weeks, we've at least given you something to think about. If you don't go out and read the book for yourself, certainly um, think about your upper limit problems. What's the pebble in your garden hose? I
Mm.
think, what is our call to action, Judith?
Well, we have two. You have to help clarify me. Is it the one? Are you willing to look at some of your blockages and consider the upper level work? Or on page 10, sorry, y'all, 111, where he calls to the action steps,
Hmm.
daily action step, these specific, make a commitment to keeping an attitude of wonder. and learning about your upper limit behaviors. What are your upper limit behaviors? And we just went through several of them: worry, blame and criticism, getting sick or hurt,
Deflecting.
squabbling, deflecting, hiding feelings, not keeping agreements, and not speaking significant truths to relevant people.
Yes. Woo. Yeah, we could honestly talk for another 2 weeks on this, I think,
Right.
just on those things right there.
Agreed.
But being in integrity with yourself is the key to all of the goodness, to all of the flow.
Mm.
And it takes some work. It's not going to come
Mm-mm.
easily, depending on how many barriers we have to our happiness, our ultimate happiness. It may take more work for some than others, but it's there, and that's where the gold is. Yeah, that's where the abundance is. The abundance is moving out of that box that we've kept ourselves in, and that spiral flow upwards.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's good work. Again, I have enjoyed this book more. It took me a couple of times, like, but this time it really,
Resonated.
I heard all the messages.
Yeah.
The first
Yeah,
time.
this is one of those great books, I think, that you can read at different points in your life. Like, I may come back a year from now and reread it and get something completely different,
Same.
because it's just going to depend a lot on where you are in your own life, what you take from it. But there's something there for you.
Yeah, totally.
So,
Like, I can't, yeah, I listened to it a couple times and then I was like, and I'm like, whoa, it's a good little
yeah.
book.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us this week. We'll be back again next week. And until then, I'm Sonya Green from SonyaGreenCoaching.com.
And I'm Judith Fender with the No BS Weight Loss Program.
We'll see you next week.